Hey, welcome back to Shine in the Darkness. We're so glad you're here. Thank you for all of your support and prayers for the channel, for liking the video, for commenting, for sharing it out. You can copy that link and then paste it on your social media page. And then that's helping us take the gospel to the nations. So thank you for your support. Today we continue our verse-by-verse study through 3 John on relationships, and today the focus is holy hospitality. You know, there's something magical about walking into a space where you're instantly welcomed, not just with words, but with real warmth that kind of sinks deep right into your bones. Maybe you felt this at your grandmother's house, where the smell of something delicious greets you at the door, and then her embrace makes you feel like the most important person in the world. Or perhaps it's at that little diner where the waitress has remembered your name all these years and knows your usual order before you even sit down. You know, where everybody knows your name. That's the kind of radical hospitality, holy hospitality that Gaius practiced in the early church. And it's exactly what our weary, worn-out world needs today. In 3 John, chapter 1, beginning in verse 5, "Beloved, you are acting faithfully in whatever you accomplish for the brethren, and especially when they are strangers. And they have testified to your love before the church. You will do well to send them on their way in a manner worthy of God. For they went out for the sake of the name, accepting nothing from the Gentiles. Therefore, we ought to support such men, so that we may be fellow workers with the truth." John's letter gives us this beautiful snapshot again of Gaius, a man whose home became holy ground for traveling ministers. These weren't just polite visitors. We're talking about opening his doors to strangers, feeding them, funding their mission, and then sending them off like they were spiritual royalty. Because of his generosity, Gaius didn't just host meals, he hosted miracles. His ordinary acts of kindness became the fuel for extraordinary ministry all across the region. Today, in our digital world, holy hospitality might look a little different, but it pretty much is the same way we see in the scripture here. Whether we're welcoming someone into our physical homes, or maybe in our church lobby, or even right here in an online space like the Shine in the Darkness YouTube channel. We're constantly making choices to either include or exclude, to see people or to look past them. The early church had its Diotrephes types. I know we're going to get to that. That's coming up next week. Don't miss that drama. We mentioned it last week. We're getting there. But thank God first for the Gaiuses, the ones who understand that true ministry often happens around tables and in everyday moments of connection. Faithful in the everyday. The text tells us that Gaius was faithful in whatever he accomplished for the brethren. The word accomplish in the Greek paints a picture of consistent roll up your sleeves service. These traveling preachers were not arriving in limousines. They were dusty, hungry. They were often running from persecution. Gaius didn't wait for a more convenient time or for ideal circumstances to welcome them. His instant holy hospitality wasn't a unique special occasion event. It was a lifestyle. It was his daily bread of Christian love. This challenges us deeply in our swipe left cancel culture, where we often treat relationships like disposable commodities. True holy hospitality shows up in these small, steady, daily little choices. Sending that follow-up text to a visitor that you met for the first time in church on Sunday. Maybe noticing when someone's coffee cup is empty during a Bible study and seeing if they'd like for you to fill it up for them. Or in spaces just like online forums here on our Shine in the Darkness YouTube channel, in the comments, making sure that no voice goes unheard. It's about developing eyes to see needs and hands that are ready to meet them with fanfare. Imagine your phone's read receipts telling a story. We've all experienced that sinking feeling, when you see red at 2:15 p.m. and yet you get no response. Now, picture how visitors feel when they walk into our churches or they join our online communities only to be left unread spiritually. Gaius was the human equivalent of an immediate reply with heart emojis. His actions constantly communicated, you matter here, I'm glad you're here, you count here, you're important to me. See, that's the kind of faithful presence that turns buildings into homes and screens into sacred spaces. And then there's extraordinary love for strangers. What's remarkable is that Gaius showed special kindness to strangers. In the ancient world, welcoming unknown travelers was risky business. There was no background checks. There were no reference letters. Just faith in these fellow believers and that they were who they claimed to be. And yet Gaius leaned into the uncertainty because he recognized that these men were on assignment from God. Their shared commitment to Christ became that letter of recommendation. Now, this cuts against our modern instincts where we often circle up with people just like us. Got to be the same age. Got to be the same denomination. Got to be kind of like the same stage, the same interests, the same place in life. But see, the gospel compels us to look beyond our comfort zones, to the newcomers in the pew, to the single mom who is juggling kids on the back row all by herself, or that first-time commenter in a digital sacred space gathering. See, real hospitality isn't about waiting for people to earn their place at the table. It's about setting extra places at the table, just in case God sends someone our way. Think about the difference between a nightclub bouncer and a grandmother at Thanksgiving. One is evaluating whether you're cool enough to get in, but the other is pulling up chairs and piling your plate high before you can even introduce yourself. Too many churches and too many believers accidentally operate like exclusive clubs with unwritten rules about who fits in. But Gaius modeled grandmother-level hospitality, the kind that makes everyone feel like family the moment they walk through the door, whether that door is made of wood or pixels. And then celebrating generosity publicly. The text tells us here these traveling ministers testified about Gaius' love before the entire church. They didn't just thank him privately. They made sure everyone knew about his kindness. There's something powerful about publicly celebrating generosity. It's not about inflating egos, but it is about creating a culture where hospitality and generosity becomes contagious. When we spotlight ordinary acts of love, we inspire others to follow that example. This principle translates beautifully into sacred spaces online. See, when we take time in digital services or online gatherings to share stories of people showing Christ's love, about that deacon who fixed a widow's leaky roof, a teenager who invited the entire lunch table to youth group, the online small group member who sent groceries to someone who was struggling to make ends meet. In that case, we're not just giving compliments. We are literally casting vision for what Christian community can look like. And these stories become a modern equivalent of those early church testimonies about Gaius. Imagine social media if Gaius ran it. Instead of endless selfies and carefully curated highlight reels, your feed would be full of posts like, "Shout out to Sister Sarah, who watched 3 kids so their mom could attend Bible study tonight." Or, "Let's celebrate Brother Mark, who donated his entire bonus to the mission trip fund." See, that's the kind of content that could actually change a culture where we're quicker to praise acts of service than we are to post our latest accomplishments. When we make generosity famous, we create communities where people compete to outlove one another rather than outshine one another. And then there are send-offs worthy of the gospel here. John commends Gaius for sending these ministers on their way in a manner worthy of God. Oh, he wasn't just waving goodbye from the porch. He was making sure they had everything they needed for the journey ahead. In that culture, that might have meant provisions for the road, letters of introduction to the next believers along the way. It might include financial support for their next phase of ministry. Gaius understood that true hospitality doesn't end at the door. It extends as far as our influence can reach. This challenges us to think beyond our immediate circles, doesn't it? When we support missionaries, it's not just about writing checks, though I think that's important, that matters. It's also about knowing their needs, praying specifically for their work and for the challenges they face, and staying connected so they'll know that they're not alone. In digital, online communities, it might mean sharing a ministry's content to expand their reach, or sending an encouraging note to a pastor who's literally pouring themselves out online, in addition to a traditional ministry. Holy hospitality. See, it has a sending dimension, doesn't it? We're not just hosts, but we're launch pads for God's work in the world. Picture the difference between a cheap model and a 5-star resort. One gives you a thin towel and hopes you don't notice the stains, but the other loads you up with toiletries. They turn down your sheets and they ask if you need anything before you leave. Gaius was the spiritual equivalent of a luxury experience. Not because he was showy or glamoury or anything like that, but because he understood these ministers were doing God's work, and they deserved to be sent off and sent out with their cups overflowing. See, when we invest in God's people and we send them off well, we become part of the story that God is writing through their lives. And then becoming fellow workers. We become fellow workers with them. I think the most stunning part of this message comes at the end. John says that by supporting these ministers, Gaius becomes a fellow worker with them and with the truth. He doesn't just enable ministry, he participates in it. Every meal served, Every night's lodging that he provided, every coin given, became part of the eternal impact that these preachers were having throughout the region. Gaius may have never traveled more than a few miles from home, and yet his influence, his impact through hospitality stretched the reach of the gospel across the entire region. This changes how we view our role of God's kingdom. You may not be called to stand on the stage, and you may not be called to sing or write or to travel to a foreign country. But when you support those who do, you share in their reward. That casserole for a grieving family who just lost a loved one, you're ministering. That donation that you're giving to the youth mission trip, you're evangelizing. That encouraging comment that you leave online for others, you're building the kingdom. See, hospitality isn't second-class Christianity. It is the hidden engine that powers frontline ministry. Think of it like this. When you order delivery, you're not just paying for food, you're employing drivers. You're supporting the restaurant. You're feeding other families. In the same way, when we practice holy hospitality, we're not just being nice and friendly. Oh no, we're funding gospel advancement. We're sustaining ministers and pastors. We're creating sacred spaces where lives can be transformed. Gaius' story reminds us that some of the most significant ministry happens not in the spotlight, but around tables, in living rooms, through simple acts of love that keeps the message and the messengers going. I want you to think about your home for a moment. Is your home a hub for heaven? As we wrap up, I want you to imagine something with me. Picture your home. Whether that's a physical or dress, or maybe it's your corner of the internet. It's the place you hang out. And it's buzzing with holy activity. Strangers become friends. Lonely hearts find family. Weary pastors get encouraged and refreshed. That's what happened in Gaius' house. That's holy hospitality. And it can happen in your house too. Holy hospitality isn't about having a perfect space all decorated just nice with unlimited spaces and resources available. No, that's not it. I know that's often the way we think of it. But holy hospitality is about having an open heart that sees every guest as Christ in disguise. And right now, I want to invite you to respond. Maybe you're realizing that you've been more of a spectator than a participant in God's work. Perhaps God is speaking to you right now about using your home, about using your resources, about using your online influence and presence differently than what you're doing right now. Some of you might even be feeling called to go deeper in supporting the ministry or being more involved in ministry, whether that's maybe taking a mission trip overseas or supporting maybe a digital pastor who's reaching people in places that the gospel can't freely get to. Let's make this practical right now. If you're new here and you want to experience this type of Christian community, I want you to type new in the comments and let us welcome you properly. And if you're feeling stirred to support this ministry, this work, whether through giving or through praying or through practical help, I want you to send me an email, pastor@linkchapel.com. pastor@linkchapel.com. actionable.com. If you don't have a pastor, I would be honored to be your pastor. I minister through a website and through Google Meet video link, linkchapel.com, and I also minister on the Blessed app. Maybe you want to download that and check that out. I'm on there live at 8 a.m. almost every day. Not every day, but most days. And if you're ready to practice holy hospitality in your daily life, let's get you going. Let's get you going. Open your heart, open your doors as your commitment to Christ, and look for opportunities to support and to show the love of Christ in very tangible, practical ways. What made Gaius remarkable wasn't his wealth. It wasn't his social status or his popularity. It wasn't his amount of followers or the number of likes and hearts. It was just his willingness to see and to use his ordinary life, his resources, as fuel for God's extraordinary work on this earth. And that same opportunity is right before me, and it's right before you today. When we practice holy hospitality, we don't just change little moments here and there. We are changing eternities. Your home, your church, even your social media platform can become an outpost for the kingdom of God if you'll approach each of them with the kind of generous, giving, evangelistic spirit that Gaius had. And who knows, the next person that you welcome might just be the one that God uses to change the world. God bless you. Thank you for jumping on today. We'll see you next time as we continue to teach verse by verse through 3 John and continue this series on relationships.